Also, Assalamu alaikum is good afternoon from England. Sorry for my technical issues. I thought I was in mute. So today our session is occupational therapy, and we will mainly focus on sensory issues. Today's our honorable guest is Mr. GUO HUA. GUO is occupational therapist at Bridging the Gap Intervention, Bright Path Preschool and Inner Circle, Dhaka. Welcome to our live session, Mr. GUO HUA.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you
nice to meet you guys.
So much to you to give us a time. Mr. GUO HUA, I will first, the question I'm going to ask you is, what is actually online therapy is, or normally we call teletherapy, and why it is important for us, especially in this current situation?
I see. All right. So online teletherapy has been brought into the public's eyes due to the COVID, but I believe it's something that has been done in the past, where we are using technology to pass the information from the clinical setting to the home-based setting. It is important because during the lockdown, children are not able to go to the clinics, the rehabilitation centers, so they will not be receiving the therapy they need. However, we know time is important, so these children should continue to receive the therapy. So the idea is therapy can be done in two ways. One, we will pass the information to the parents. Parents carry out the instructions, carry out the activities with the children. That is one way. Second way is we have a live intervention sections. The therapists will look at the child and the parents on the screen and then give instructions like make the child bounce on the trampoline. Okay, now throw the ball to the child. So that is concurrently. So it is important to have these activities on the weekly basis or even a daily basis, so that the children receive the sufficient sensory inputs or motor skill inputs. Yeah, because we never know how long this lockdown, the situation is going to be. Yeah, we don't want the child to waste the time. And I remember those golden words from my supervisor, my mentor, and he was saying, who is our biggest enemy? It's not the next therapy center, it's time. Our biggest enemy is the time. So the idea of teletherapy is to fight against the time and to equip the parents with the necessary skills. Yeah, so that's what I think it is important. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. GUO. And I think also we shouldn't wait when the situation will be calm down, because we have to, as soon as possible, we have to do the early intervention. That's the main aim. So thank you so much for sharing your opinion about online therapy session. My second question is to you. What about a Singaporean system? Like we know a little bit about Bangladesh, we know about England, America, India, but we don't know about Singapore. Could you please just share a little bit with us how Singapore works on our special needs children?
I see. All right, so I'm going to break it down into, if you can just zoom in, then I can kind of write it on the white blackboard. So we have what we call the government system, and then what we call the private system. Yeah, so in both systems, we will have early detections. So children as young as 2 months, 3 months, they will start to go to government general practitioners, and then we'll identify the issues. So if we are talking specifically about children with autism, we may be able, I'm just saying maybe, able to pick up those signs at 6 months old. So the first line of defense, is probably on the government side, where there is by what we call the GP, general practitioners, who pick up the children's issues at 6 months. And subsequently, these children can enter into what we call early intervention centers. They enter into early intervention centers at 2 years old, 2.5. So you have a choice of both government and the private early intervention centers. And these early intervention centers, typically children goes there for 3 hours. They have options of taking 5 days per week, or 1, 3, 5, or 2, 4. That's depend on the severity of the children. So both sides, you can have a half day, you can have a full day. So that is early intervention centers. Other than that, what we are looking at is more of a private one-to-one occupational therapy sessions, speech therapy sessions. Yeah. So I'm going to put it on the private side. Or maybe we even have a physiotherapy sessions concurrently. Yeah. So this will apply to both sides, OT, speech, and the physiotherapy. And sometimes you can even have the ABA. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to move the ABA to the private side. It's more prominent at the private side. Okay, so I think from this you can see this is the situation in the Singapore setting. Okay, sorry, do you have any question on this?
No, I think it's almost similar to England, USA. Though in England, ABA is not provided by the government. We have to do it privately.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guha, to sharing with us. We will now go to our main discussion of today's. I think we will be more focused on sensory issues of our children.
Okay.
So, our first question will be for you is what will be the fun activities for sensory avoiding and sensory seeking child?
I see. Okay, give me a minute. All right, so I think we need to define a few terms in this case. The definition of sensory avoiding and sensory seeking. Now, these are two of the domains under or class characteristics under the sensory profile. Other than sensory avoiding, sensory seeking, we have low registrations, and then we have some form of sensory avoider, seeker, and then there's some form of passive. So these are given by, if I'm not wrong, it's Dr. Vinnie Dunn's sensory profile that will look at the child's response and then the threshold. Yeah, so you divide into the 4 quadrants based on their receptiveness of the sensory inputs. For if the response is low, threshold is low, then we are classifying them as low registrations. That means it gives some inputs to the child. There is not much of a response. The child doesn't reply to some form of a sound, some form of movement, some form of visual inputs. Again, it's under low registrations. On the other side, the child's response is high, but threshold is low. So how do we explain the response is high? That means the child is taking a lot of inputs in that case. So he's able to taking a lot of inputs for that case. And then we are talking about a child who is actively avoiding because of the threshold. So this is how we're going to put them. On the opposite side, we're going to have a avoider. So, just these two is directly opposite. One is no response. The other one is a very quick response, low threshold. And over here, we can have someone who is a sensitivity. All right. And then we have one more, which is a bystander. So come back to your question is a child who has sensory avoiding and sensory seeking behaviors. So based on this, it can be one single child who is having one single profile, or a child who has combination of 2 profiles. So a child can, for example, can have, he enjoys swings. He loves the swing so much, but he has tactile sensitivity. So it can be present in one child. It can be both ways. The child really has fear of the swing, but there is no issue with tactile sensitivity. Okay, so two different domains, contrasting sensory thresholds and responses can happen to the same child. So that's how we define the sensory threshold and the sensory responses. Okay. Your question is fun activities. Now, in occupational therapy, we cover different skills. So fun would usually be related to play. However, on the other side, we should also look at motor skills. We should also look at cognitive skills. Yeah. So your activity firstly need to be safe. Your activity need to be age appropriate. And your activity should not be repetitive. Yeah, so we don't want some form of sleeping behaviors to come out. So such activities can be a gross motor activity or the fine motor activities. For me, I like to use therapy. Yeah, if you have experience with that, that is one of the amazing things. Different strength. You have the blue, the green, the red, and the black. Black is the hardest. Now, I always like to start with putting marbles in the therapy, and then children would dig out the marbles. So we are addressing the tactile issues, and at the same time, we are working on the finger skills. So to build on some form of fine motor skills, I will take out a scissors, I will take out a knife, and I say, let's do some cutting. And after that, we do the cutting, let's make a snowman. We roll this therapy into a ball and then form them into the body of the snowman, the hands, the legs, the head. So come back to the fun games. It has to be meaningful. The meaning behind this Play-Doh is actually fine motor, which we are making a snowman. Yeah, so I want to emphasize the point that we should have a few principles in these fun activities. Safe, yeah, definitely. Not repetitive, and it should be something that involves the brain. Yeah, so if you want something that is really simple, I would say go for therapy. That is for fine motor. Typically, parents will have trampoline at home that will be working on the gross motor. My advice for that is try not to let the child bounce for 3 minutes, 5 minutes continuously. Yeah, during the bouncing, you can blow bubbles and the children put out their hands to play with the bubbles. You can give them a bat and then they will start to hit the bubbles with the bat. Okay, so these are two examples that I will recommend. Okay.
Yes. So here, the main important thing we have to be careful as a parents is number one, child age.
Yeah.
The fun activity should be meaningful.
Yeah.
There should be activities like fine motor for gross motor. It will be like different activities, and therapy with marble. You mentioned the trampoline. You mentioned so these are the common activities, fun activities we can do. But make sure we have to be know that our child understand level and child age, and make sure that our therapy we should follow our therapist advice.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Go. My second question, I think everybody will satisfy your answer because you gave us lots of example as well. What equipment, accessories we can use even. So I'm going to go now. Our next question. Our next question is specific calming techniques for both sensory avoiding and sensory seeking.
I see. Okay. Now your question is calming. That is to bring a child from the hyperactive state to what we so-called just right states. And there is a saying in sensory integration technique in a circle that we're saying that there should be nothing wrong with heavy work. I'm not sure you heard about that before. Yeah, as long as you do some form of heavy work, the child should be able to calm down. That is true, I would say 99% of the time. Yeah, so heavy work in this case is talking about muscles and joint sensations. Now, muscles and joint sensation practically means exercises. And then in our terms is we want to make the child jump, climb, run, crash in the safe way. Yeah, because sometimes these children can have high pain threshold, right? So I'm going to define this heavy work in two different terms. One is passive and the other one is active. Now, passive is something that the children will be receiving without doing anything. So passive that we generally use, okay? One of the activities that we like to use is the wheelbarrow brushing protocol. Have you guys been using that? The white brush and brush on part of the children's body. That is something that was invented to work on children with tactile sensitivity, but subsequently they found out it does have a calming effect. So the wheelbarrow brushing protocol. As you are aware, when you are doing that, the children is receiving the inputs passively. The children may not be able to give informations like, I want more, I want less, more pressure, please, less pressure. So that is a passive way. On the other side, if the children is able to do it actively, yeah, so that would be a good idea, because after some jumping, crashing, you realize the child is able to sit down. That is a sign that, oh, the child knows that I have enough sensation, now I can focus. Yeah, so two things, active and passive activities for the child. Okay, second point, I just remember, under the passive side, that something works really well is hugging. And I think that has an emotional component. Parents have been giving feedback that the child would come to the parent and say, squeeze. Yeah. So if you want to calm a child with hyperactiveness down, the best way is to give a child a tight squeeze. Yeah, so that is under the passive form. In the market, there are certain things that the parents have been using for the children. Examples like weighted vest, pressure garment. These are compensatory methods that can be done for a longer time, 2 hours to 5 hours each day. Yeah, so that is something has been tried, although the results really differ from child to child. Yeah, but it is something that I would say is easy to implement and is a continuous effort. Okay, so I have kind of pinpoint that you can try to do some form of activity that is short term and that is a brushing, and then something that is longer time that is more of a hugging. The weighted vest. So that's more under the passive side. On the active side, you should try to speak to an occupational therapist who would recommend based on the child's needs, like how long should the child hold on to the monkey bar, how long should the child push something heavy. Correct.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you mentioned is a brush. One is brush, another one weighted vest.
Yes, weighted vest or the pressure gun.
Use for my daughter weighted vest. It works. It works very good way.
And that's so nice to hear that.
To run here and there. So we have been suggested from OT, and we use that. Yeah. So nice. I can relate with you now. Thank you so much. It was very, very helpful suggestion for us. Thank you so much. We're gonna move to our next questions. I think audience, you are like okay, because the way Mr. GUO HUA is explaining us is excellent. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to move to our next question. This is a common question for all the parents. Like most of our children is leaking issues. They leak, they taste or chew on inedible objects. So these are the common, I think, issues we are facing every day. So if you give us some suggestion what we can do, that will be great.
Okay. Yeah. So these will fall under what we call oral motor sensory issues. And in this case, such cases usually are seen by the occupational therapist and the speech therapist at the same time. And so typically the speech therapist, from what I have partnered with, they will be given some form like a chewy tube. They might be recommending some form of vibration tool, and they could be doing some form of brushing in the mouth. That's oral motor side. Yeah, so that is for oral motor sensitivity. Okay, so, and these are technique skills from the speech therapy side. On the occupational therapy side, and I'm specialized in sensory integrations, we are saying that, yes, these are present in the oral motor, but can we use other components to help with this component, the oral motor component? So first we analyze, is the child chewing, grinding teeth, or biting certain things? So if that is the case, can we use heavy work to compensate or to work on the same part of the brain who craves for such heavy movements? Instead of through the teeth, can we do it through the body? Can we do some form of crashing activity so that it satisfies the body's need for large muscular movements? So we will do jumping down from certain heights. Yeah, so that is one activity that I will recommend. Or hold on to the trapeze bar and then swing for 10-20 counts. So that is one activity that differs from the speech therapy side. We don't target the component directly. Instead, we'll work around it using idea that is different muscles but goes to the same input of the brain. Okay, so hopefully we make sense. But as of now, 10 years in practice, I would say that you will need both, yeah, to achieve faster results. Because this form of sensory behavior is readily available, because they can pick up anything, a pen, and even their fingers. So you really need to tackle this with different solutions. If you are going for a long trip, going to a place like a shopping center, you're expecting a lot of noises, then please bring along your chewy tube. The child can get it readily and then satisfy his own sensory needs. When you come home, then you start to do your heavy work. So hopefully this makes sense.
Thank you so much. Mr. GUO, I have a question here, because you already mentioned oral motor sensory issue. It could be deal with SLT and OT, both professional. Yes. Yeah, there is a confusion, because SLT, they says no, OT cannot do this. This is our field. There is a debate. So you already clear what their part actually, what SLT's part and what is OT's part, and your conclusion is we need actually both intervention.
Yes, I would say yes. In Singapore, occupational therapists can go for a particular course. I think it's called the SOS course, and then be trained and certified in providing techniques of oral motor techniques. There is no conflict of interest. Yeah, but I think maybe in particular countries, in particular hospitals or centers, there is a clear line that you should not overlapping with each other. So I think that is a personal judgment. It's not like you are not allowed to do such things. I always give the example, if you are the only therapist in the center, you're going to be an OT, you're going to be the speech, you're going to be the psychologist, you're going to be the educational therapist. You're doing everything. Yeah, there's no clear definition for you.
Yeah, and you can understand, we are just parents, so we don't know lots of things. We need more time to understand actually what is oral motor sensories and whose field it's. So that's why I'm on behalf of parents, I'm just little bit clarifying that actually it can be deal with both professionals, but it's depend on child situation actually, what child needs are. Thank you so much, Mr. GUO. We're going to move to our next question. Our next question is how to handle the child with repetitive behavior and how to use reinforcement. That's another common issues from our parents.
Okay. Now, repetitive stereotypical behaviors, or in other words, they call it steaming, has been around, and it has been one of the most tricky issues that we struggle to handle. I must be honest. I always tell parents that this behavior comes out suddenly, and it goes away suddenly after 3 months or 6 months. So that is one problem. We don't know how it will arrive. Sometimes it does have a cause. For example, the child's flapping. We feel that it comes from clapping. Yeah, and then some form of finger movement. You know, I've seen that they just and a grinding teeth on visual movements. So we are struggling firstly to find out how does it develop. So it can be so random. All right. Now, such situations can have a fun component in there. So we always feel that they do it when they are bored. Yeah. So they create such games to entertain themselves. Now, the debate is, do you stop a child having fun? I think we should not. But instead, we should expand on these fun games into something more meaningful. Now, if you have experience with therapy, you will realize that some children like to pull it and that it becomes strings. So that is when you feel that it becomes a steaming behaviors. So I will always come in and teach them to roll the therapy into a ball and then do some form of bouncing. So in this case, to stop the child from repetitive behavior, you have to work on the brain. What I mean by work on the brain is to give new play ideas, to expand on the sequences of play. That is one idea. Okay, second point, this is a recent case. The parents brought up that the child likes to play with the sleeve, and then before she sleeps, she will use her thumb and index to rub the sleeve. And his comments, the daddy's comment is, should I stop her? And then we thought that no, you should not, because this is something, sensory behavior can provide a form of calming effect. So if we can recap, the first one is the child is using these sensory steaming behaviors as a form of play. On the other side, it is a form of calming effect for them. So they will rub on their sleeve, they will chew, they will play with the label, the clothes. They need some form of constant assurance through this sensory behavior. So again, I would say let's not stop that, but try to allocate these activities to certain timing. Like I say, the girl was using it before her nap, so we should restrict that only to the nap time. And then we should keep if certain toys only at particular timing. So in our line is we should not stop the child from doing these sensory steaming behaviors. The reason is to prevent escalation into the meltdown. Like you don't try to calm a child down when it's at the top of the meltdown. You calm it after the meltdown. So why don't we just allow the child to have some sensory calming behavior by themselves? Yeah, so that is my point. Second point is, if it's small and if it provides some form of calming behavior, then you should not stop the stereotypical repetitive behaviors. Okay, point number 3 is, these behaviors tend to have some form of pattern. Now, the pattern in a way is when they are bored, when they are not engaged. Yeah, so they'll definitely start to show this behavior. It appears when a child becomes hyper, although this is quite controversial, is whether this behavior causes them to be hyper, or after they become hyper, they start to show more signs of stereotypical behavior. So my advice is, when you are doing some form of therapy at home, like brushing, like spinning, like bouncing on the trampoline, take note of the changes. Yeah, always speak to your therapist. Don't overdo this bouncing. When you look at a child who bounces for 1 minute, you start to hear the screaming, the laughter, and then the hand flapping signs coming out. That is very clear that the trigger comes from these bouncers. So you should try to reduce the bouncers. However, you realize that this is something the child likes. So instead of stopping, you should try to redivert with something. What I try to do is to throw a large gym ball. Yeah, so then the child will bounce up, push a gym ball. Again, don't stop it directly. Child will not know what you are trying to do. You are trying to stop something that he's having fun of. Yeah, instead, redivert the attention to something that's meaningful. Okay, so hopefully all the 3 points make sense. It's a form of play, it's a form of calming. And then if it's a trigger, reduce the trigger.
Thank you so much, Mr. GUO HUA. I am agree with you in this point because my daughter, she used to rocks right and left too much, and she is actually very sensory seeker. But from December 2020, we are taking occupational therapy from India, and we are following his activities, what he did give us to us, and we are just now amazed the improvement of my daughter. She don't do no more rocking.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, because the first thing you say, do not stop. Because we, as a parents, we think my daughter doing flapping, rocking, looks very unusual, uncomfortable, especially in front of public.
Yes.
We feel uncomfortable. So we shouldn't be uncomfortable with this because this is one type of their sensory needs. They are making themselves calm down. So let them do it. And you said 3 method, and we have to, as a parents, we have to follow this and seek the advice from our therapist.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. GUO HUA.
Yeah, just bear in mind that every child is different. Correct.
Yes, every child is different. Thank you so much. We're going to move to our next question. And Mr. GUO, we have few questions from our audience. So we'll take those questions because we nearly finish our selected questions. So hopefully we can. So the audience who you are watching and you are joining the live session, we will take your questions after finishing our selected topics. So my next question is to you. The difficulty of filtering out other sounds and unable to locate the source of a sound.
Okay.
Difficult filtering.
Sorry, Ken. I just trying to find it.
Yeah, it was question number 7, I think.
Okay. Sorry, just repeat that question. I will just write it down. Difficulty with
difficulty filtering out other sounds and unable to locate the source of a sound.
I see. Okay. Now, in this way, sound give us the information of directions. So that is that's quite clear. You know where it comes from, the distance, up, down, left, right. It can be something that's outside the door which you don't know. So that is something about directions. Now, sound also give us some form of informations. For example, it's sound of the animal, sound of the bird, sound of the vacuum cleaner, sound of the aeroplane, sound of the thunder. So that is some form of information. And number 3 points is sound like languages. So we say there is some form of emotions, communications. Yeah, so these are what we usually say the purpose of sounds. Now, children can have sensitivity to all 3. Typically, we are talking about vacuum cleaner, hair dryer. By research, we have kind of identified is most likely, I'm not saying all, most likely is due to the frequency. Yeah, so these children, especially those children with ASD, they have the ability to pick up and difficulty with filtering of sound of a lower frequency. So just now we talk about hair dryer or vacuum cleaner. Second point is they may have difficulty with the distance or unexpected sounds. So when a vacuum cleaner comes up suddenly or a hair dryer, I mean, it happens to my son as well, who is 2, and then he will run away. And what I would do is just bring him there and then let him press a button and play for a while. Now he's getting used to that. Yeah, he was even using the hair dryer to help me to dry my hair. So to work on this sensitivity, first you had to do some form of traditional, that is gradual desensitizations, allow them to play with these items. Yeah. However, the second scenario which we can't is like if they're afraid of sound, the thunder, those powering sound in the middle of the road, those loud engine sounds. That is something that we can't help. I mean, we can't help directly. So what we do is we use some form of music therapy to help these children. The idea of this music therapy is to put on a headphone and listen to those modified musics. In the market, you will be able to find things like samonas. You will be able to find like tomatis, able to find therapeutic listening programs. The evidence behind this and the success rates are limited. But as a child with, as a parent with special needs, then I think you want to be careful with this because firstly, it can be costly. You bought the equipment, the child refused to put on the headphones, that might cause some form of trauma. So that will compromise on the therapy itself. Yeah. So the second option is you really have to think about it and try it gradually without giving the child another set of issues that you don't want to handle. That is the trauma. Okay. However, on certain cases that I've worked with, they actually work wonders. Then I want to give an example, which I heard it yesterday. Yesterday morning, I have the case. So not sure how many of you is aware of this program called interactive metronome. A child has to put on a headphone and listen to the sound and then clap at the same time as the sound. So this child is 6-year-old and he's not so verbal. He can make certain sounds. Yeah. And then yesterday the mom came back and said, oh, you know what? After your session, when I was driving him here, he was making the sound ding, 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 ding. So that is sound that comes from the computer. Then he start to generate it by itself. So I thought, well, that is nice. Now, we should try to expand on these ideas. So that is when we say try to mimic those sounds, loud sounds, soft sounds, and try to point to the direction where it comes from. So it works indirectly. Instead of asking the child to get used to this, we are teaching them indirectly, play one game while the sound is playing at the background. And then the child would associate these two sounds together rather than it being overwhelming sensations. So when the child is bouncing on the trampoline, doing some form of hitting the bubbles, play sounds at the background. So hopefully this makes sense. Yeah, the two ideas. You can try out music therapy and you can try to do something meaningful and play the sound at the background. Hope it works for you guys.
Okay, Mr. Goa. Mr. Goa, here, I have the question here. Like you said, music therapy. Yeah, my daughter used to have music therapy, but lots of parents they actually don't even understand what is music therapy. Normally, we mean music means we have to learn, we have to teach our children music, but it's not actually to teach your child what is music. It's a therapy. It's the one type of therapy. Could you just little bit explain what is actually music therapy means for our special needs children?
I see. So yes, you are right. It's not like learning piano. It's not like learning violin. Not drums, but it's the child. First and most, they have to put on a headphone. Yeah, it has nothing to do with them playing any form of musical instruments. All they have to do is just to listen, and with the headphone, in the market they usually use specialized headphone like Sennheiser, and the children will be receiving modified musics. So even they listen to a normal children's song, like If You're Happy and You Know It, the rhythm, the frequency of the music is being adjusted. Now, if I can give one simple example is, you hear sounds on both sides. But in this music, they can be adjusted that you hear on the right side for 5 seconds, then it goes to the left side. So the right side is totally quiet. So that is how we work on the bilateral hearing. And then can you imagine this? Just the previous question was the child was having issue with locating, filtering out the sound. This is a perfect example that if the music comes from right side for 5 seconds and then left side for another second, it's teaching the child on how to differentiating the direction, the orientation of sound. Yeah, so that is working on the cognitive level of the auditory processing. So that is one way. Secondly, music therapy has different components. Firstly, it will have the typical children's songs. Yeah, like Itsy Bitsy Spider. So that is something they are familiar with. Second component is we can have sound of the jungle. We can sound of the ocean. Sometimes it can be in a group of white noises. So that is second group. Third group is for music therapy, we tend to use classical musics. You can have pure piano music. You can have pure violin musics, and you know how different they are. And at this point, I must say that I'm not really the expert, but the point is they have different frequency, pitches, and all that. It can be very pleasant to others and unpleasant to another child. Yeah, so this is the third range is something that you should be careful and talk to your therapist before you start to let your child hear. Because some parents will say, okay, I just let my son listen to classical music. No, it doesn't work that way. Even classical music, you can have just pure piano music, or you can have a symphony orchestra that can really overwhelm the child. Yeah. Even for piano itself, you can have a slow rhythm or fast rhythm. Yeah. So typically for a child who is low arousal, we use a fast rhythm. And for the child who is very hyper, we should use a slow rhythm. Yeah. That is a typical session. But a child who is hyperactive, he will not pay attention to something that is slow. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so you should have what we call a sandwich method. You play fast, play slow, then go back to fast. Yeah, so that's how we engineer the form of changes to the child.
Thank you so much. Mr. Guhua, can you see the question? Raj resolve Kori. Because I took this question now because you're saying low aerosol matter, and here it says hyper. Is it any relation between here in hyperactive and hyperactivity? Like some of our kids are hyperactive and some hypoactive, and some of our kids are hypo. So is it?
Yeah, yes, okay. I think before 2015, we have different classification or ASD, and then after that, the DSM just combine everything. However, that is based on the functioning level. It wasn't based on the activeness of the child. So yes, so typically we have two extreme side, hypo, HYPO, and hyperactive. So if we replace the word hypo, a similar word I will use is low processing, slow registration. That's what hypo. Hope it makes sense. Low threshold, right? So that's what hypo. Now, on the other way, at the other spectrum, hyperactive is someone who is high threshold, high energy level. Now, such children can have a lot of movements, not sensitive to swings, touches a lot of things, putting things into a mouth. So if you just put a word to describe this, they are really busy. You know, you have to keep your eyes on them all the time. Otherwise, they will be doing a lot of things. Yeah. So hyperactiveness is a busy child, whereas a hypoactiveness is a child who does nothing. Okay. Choose to lay around. So the parents' question is how to start the therapy for such children. But I think regardless of which type of child it is, your activity should have 3 components. We say the warm-up, the main activity, and the cool-down, right? Now, so it makes sense that the warm-up is something that is slightly hyper, and the last activity should be something that is calming. The main activity in the middle, what I usually try to do is somewhat of a cognitive. Yeah, so there should be nothing wrong. Start off the day with bouncing, with some form of jumping. This will work well for both who are hypo and hyperactive. In the morning, a child who is low arousal needs to wake up. Yeah, so he needs to do some form of high energy activity. In the morning, the child who is high energy is already active and running. So you just need to redirect it to something that's meaningful and in terms of bouncing and jumping to some form of obstacle course. So the starting point is the same. It's in between that the more cognitive related activities. So for a child who is low energy, you need to make sure the energy level is consistent. Yeah, so they will have the behavior of slouching. Yeah, so you cannot increase the energy level suddenly for them. Yes. Now, when we talk about energy level, it doesn't just mean muscle. It can also mean the eye tracking activities. It can mean activity that's related to sounds. It can mean activity just on the fingers. Really, don't be restricted to large movement activities. Yeah, so that is during the main activities. And finally, both children need something to calm down. Yeah, that is when we will say, okay, let's do some form of structured activities. And for this, I would recommend some form of passive structured activities. Since we are already doing calming activities that needs them to slow down, I can think of if it's at night. Yeah, you don't want the child to be jumping and jumping. So you do something passive like brushing, like spinning, like a sushi roll on the floor, like from some form of massages. Yeah, so 3 types of activities. Okay.
Thank you so much. We have 2 more questions to go through, and then we will take a few questions from the audience. Is that okay, Mr. Go?
Sure.
Okay, so our next question is to you. Tell us some activities on hand and eye coordination to improve eye contact and attention. This is another common concern of parents about their children. Eye contact and attention.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I think this is something that I do on daily basis. I'm a guy. I love sports, and then this is something that we want our children to learn. Yes, it may sound like there is no direct link. You know, eye contact is something that's social, and then you play ball catchings, you play ball hittings. It's something to do with motor. But how can we combine these 2 activities that is more meaningful for the children, and then you can work on both goals? So if a child has difficulty in catching the ball, what I would recommend is you attach the ball to a string. Yeah, so attach ball to a string and then make it like a pendulum. So that is easier for the child to catch without the child being rolling around. And then when you are doing these games, you can vary the ball movement, like going in straight direction or going in circular directions. Yeah. So if you are throwing the ball, I think you are not so good that you can throw a curved ball. But if you attach the ball to the string, you can make the ball turn around. Can you imagine the child's eyes will be tracking sideways, following the ball? And the bigger the movement, the wider is the eye tracking action. Yeah. So this is something that I would do typically in my lessons. There are things that you can vary. You can vary the size of the ball. You can vary the weight of the ball. So you are adding another sensation. When the ball hits the child, it's going to create the muscle impact, so that it will increase the eye contact. Yeah. So hopefully this is something that you would like to try. Yeah. So try to if you have, I know some of you have certain equipment at home. Yeah, like such as a swing. Okay. In the occupational therapy gym, we try to put the children in different orientations. Typically, a child is upright, but if you have a swing that is big enough, you can make the child lie down on the belly and then go in this orientation, circular, or we call the Superman orientations. Now, this will put the child's eyes in different plane, and then it will increase the child's neck movement. When the neck movement is increased, the visual field tracking is improved. If you are strong, put a child on upside down positions. Yeah. So if I to summarize, secondly is the items, the objects need to move in different orientation. Secondly, the child's body need to be in different orientations. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Go. Because the first one you said, string with ball, I think it will be like great to work for with children, because we know our children they like ball, especially soft balls. If we make it little interesting and funny for them, they will get in. Thank you so much. Our last question to you is how to improve poor muscle tone to improve W sitting, climbing stairs, and pressure while writing.
Okay. Core body strength related to low tone, and then the posture. Okay, and then increase the handwriting skills. Can now in this case, core body we generally refers to the front part of the body and the back. Sorry, I was like leaning down, slouching. That feels like I don't have a good core body strength. Yeah. So first and most, if you want to work on core body, you need some form of good furniture. That's to say, your table, your chair need to have a proper backrest. Yeah, because this applies to adults. After 15-20 minutes, you start to lose your energy, then you start to slouch. So you need some form of environmental compensations. Yeah. Easier way, if you don't want, is to stand up and walk around. Some parents do jumping or push up, rolling on the floor. So activity that can help with the core body, sit up. Yeah, sit up will work on the abdominal side. And if you have a chance, go for swimming, which it will work on the back. Yeah, so that is the something that you can do it on regular basis. Because if you're talking about low tone, that is something that can stay with the child for a long time, such that you need continuous therapy. And if especially during this period of time, therapy centers are closed, then you need to do some form of activity at home. If you have a chance, access to water, that's swimming. If not, just think of the position. During the swimming, your body is in this position. So put 2 chairs on the floor, one for your child's hand and one for the legs. Yeah, so the child's body is like floating in the air. If the child has difficulty, just put the hands on the floor, the legs on the sofa or table, and just ask the child to stay there for a while. Then you might ask, doesn't it sound like a wheelbarrow? Yes, you can do wheelbarrow, but how many of you out there have a very strong back? Yeah, wheelbarrow is very damaging to the parent's body. Yeah, so if you want to take care of your son, take care of yourself first. So that is for strengthening activity for the core body. If you have some access to outdoor swings and playground, trapeze bar, monkey bar is one of the good things. Let them hold it there for 10-20 seconds. If the monkey bar is low, what you can try to do is put the child upside down. That's to say, with the legs over the bar, and then the head is swinging. Yeah. 10-20 seconds. That is a great activity to work on the core. Okay, so back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guho. So far, our session was like, for me, it was excellent. The way you explained everything was clear, crystal clear for me. I hope my audience, they will understand as well. And now, Mr. Guho, shall I move to some questions from the audience, if you give me the permission? I have little bit few questions from the audience. Thank you so much. My first question is from Nilufa Yasmin. She said, my son don't let his hair cut by streamer. He can't take the vibrator sound. What should I do for this?
I see. Okay, so you imagine in this case, firstly, it's a sound of a low frequency. Yeah, that is, I assume that is using those electric hair cutter. So that is sound sensitivity. And on the other side is scissors, that the hair will fall onto the skin. So another area that I will imagine is touch sensitivity. So these two components that we need to work with, sound and the touch. Yeah, so just now we explained that for sound sensitivity, you can use some form of music therapy, and you can use some form of vestibular activity to help with this. For touch, you will probably need to play with sand, you need to play with telepathy, and you need to do the wheelbarrow brushing protocol. That is some form of direct intervention. And so this is from the occupational therapy perspective. On the other side, it is a form of behavior that we can address through a social story. We can just address through some form of picture. Always be reminded that prepare your child, show him the card that this is what we are going to. And then don't forget to reward your child after he has done well. Yeah, so that is something that I think you should have a different approach in hands. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Guha. My next question is from Taslima Chaudhary. She said, my son is 8 and 9 years old. He puts everything into his mouth. How to reduce this behavior? He is non-verbal, only making some sounds. And if he needs something, he says, give. Is there any oral exercise which will help him to talk? Thanks in advance.
I see. Okay. Now, in that case, if you can say the word give, now I don't know how you made that sound, but if you try to close your eyes and make the sound give, that is a sound that involves sucking in. And then I will think that is consistently with the idea that he wants to put things in his mouth. Some children put him in mouth, they chew. Some children put cloth, those fabrics, they suck. So there are different forms of oral motor seeking behaviors. Sucking, making sounds, chewing. So it may be playing with saliva. Yeah. So in such case, different form of oral motor activities or gadgets are needed. Yeah. So just now we have kind of draw the lines whether it's an OT's role or speech therapist's role. So I think you should speak to someone who has the techniques, at your side. Try not to go for one size fit all. Like this tuition works for other children, it should work for my children. No, it doesn't. And based on your two information, he can make the sound of give, and then he is putting in. I think we need to find out a bit more. Yeah, I think he has particular skills. It is not so purely oral motor sensitivity.
Okay. Thank you so much. Pinu Khadija, her question is, what can we do to shut my daughter's lips? Always keep mouth open. Hold food with teeth.
I'm not sure whether she's the one in the picture. Okay, because sometimes they might have an issue with the oral mouth structures. Like for example, the upper lip or the lower lip is too high, or some children have those jaws that slightly protruding. Yeah, that's why they have difficulty with closing. So that is one possibility. Now, but you also mentioned two other things. First is keep the mouth open. I just recall sometimes in cases where they are mouth breather. Have you heard about this? And that is to say they have sensitivity with the nose. They could be having sinus, and then when they exercise, it's more apparent. They use their mouth to breathe. Yes, so that's what I say, a mouth breather. That is when they have oral motor sensitivity. Yeah, so we go back to the time when they are baby, whether they have issue with breastfeeding, drinking. Yeah, so that's how the second point we look at to answer your question. Why does she keep her mouth open? Yeah, so that's something that we need to look at the oral motor structure. Now, third point is hold food in with teeth. Then this will contradict the point, because if she's using the mouth for breathing, she will not be able to hold the food in the teeth. And typically for such cases, we call them those kids who are low tone. They like to have that kind of they don't chew. It's not like they just keep it there, and then they keep it for. Yes, I have a kid who arrived at my clinic for lesson at 5 o'clock, then he still have his lunch in the mouth. Yes, so that is something that he's a child who is low tone. So firstly, we are talking about awareness. Yeah, he is a child who is like, I would call it a worm. You know, he's rolling around on the floor. He's so soft, so flexible. So in that case, the oral motor is soft. Yeah, so they need something. Now this is the very tricky part. They are so low tone that they are not aware of something. However, on the other spectrum is they know that they are low, so they need something to be there to keep themselves high. Hope this makes sense.
Okay, so Mr. Guha, Pinu Khadija should ask for oral motor therapy, like to whom she should go now, because she lives in England.
Yeah, I think she look for a speech therapy, and then just now the point is we look at the oral motor structure, and then we look at her body tone. Yeah, and then the speech should be able to see whether the OT is needed or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Because the speech will work on the upper body, but if there is an issue with the tone, then we got OT will need to work on the neck and shoulder part below. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This will be our last question. Nurul Amin Shorkar Salim, 10 years old boy with very hyperactive. He is under many therapists, but he cannot sit for few minutes, always running or moving. So I think his question is what he can do now.
I see. Yeah. So I have a lot of such cases. They are always running. So I always tell parents that you should sandwich the activities. You allow the child to do 3 minutes of gross motor activity. Then he should come to the table and do 3 minutes of writing or play with fine motor toys. And then he goes back. And that is how we increase the time. So firstly, you are saying that he can't sit. He's always running. So the running and moving should be a meaningful activities. And we like to put it as obstacle course. You know, he's going to climb up something, take a toy, climb down, and then maybe throw the toy into another place. And he's going to repeat that for 3 to 5 times. And so this activity will take about 3 minutes. And when he has finished that, guide him to the table and let him do some form of puzzle. And this puzzle should be like 10 pieces, 20 pieces puzzle. Tell him when he finish it, then he can go back to the next obstacle course. Yeah, so this is what we call a sandwich method. Yeah, so you need to create a structure for the child. You know, it's not always like 30 minutes. You know, that is going to be too much for the child to start with. You can increase the time slowly. Yeah, and then always try to provide some form of visual so that the child knows that what's going on. It's not like he can play forever. Always remind him, after this, you go to the table. And after the table, you go to that place to play. Yeah.
Mr. Guha, if I ask you for a few more minutes, because I have two more questions, very important questions from parents.
Okay.
If you allow me, then I can take the questions.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The question is from Diana Mustafa. My 6 years old son has a habit of open sloughing as well as hopping around with high energy the next moment. Does it mean that he balances his energy level himself? How can I help further?
Yeah, I think it is very possible that he has both. Yeah, he's slouching. That means he likely to be low tone, but he has some idea. Then he is trying to make himself hyper, but he doesn't know when to stop. Yeah, I have seen such cases. They run, 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 run. Then after that they collapse. Yes, so it's kind of dangerous. Yeah, it's kind of dangerous in a way that they may overdo it, and then they will need a long break, like 30 minutes to 1 hour. Yeah, so it is important that you try to redirect the high energy activity to more of a spinning vestibular based activity rather than a lot of a muscle and joints activity. So speak to your OT on that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is from K. Arifin Bubli. Hold a remove one from fabrics, can't stop.
I see. Okay. I'm not sure how old is the child in this case, but yeah, it's definitely a form of a fine motor. And I have a child who likes to tie the paper and then start to roll into a tube, yeah, or a cloth, a piece of cloth. Then what he likes to do. Yeah. So it's definitely a form of a sensory steaming behaviors. Is more towards the hands. So just now I say you can try to redivert, and one of the tools I like to use is the therapy. So hopefully you can try that and see how the child will expand.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna take my last comments from the audience. Is from Kaji Choiti. I know you know her. She's Tintin's mom. Hello, sir. It's Tintin's mother. Your guidance worked like magic for Tintin. Thank you so much for joining us. It will be one of the very helpful session for the special needs parents. And we can see how useful it was, Mr. Guhua. And I would like to thank Kaji Choiti because she's the one who actually tell me about you. So I'm very grateful to her and all our parents who actually appreciate our work, and especially Mr. Guha. We would like to give a big thanks because today's session was actually I should say extraordinary session. We learn a lot from you, and the parents, I'm telling you, Mr. Guha has a website. I will post the website details in our group, Facebook group, after finish the live session. And if any parents, if you want to get connect with Mr. Guhua, you can connect with his website, because everything in your website, isn't it? How to contact with you?
Yes. Yeah, you can drop me a message or an email from the website itself.
Yeah, and Mr. Guha, can you tell me just a little bit about, because you already work so many parents from Bangladesh, because you are with Inner Circle.
Yes.
So you know lots of activities about Bangladesh, how Bangladesh doing. So we are ending the session, but before we go, we just want to hear from you little bit about our Bangladesh, the way it's working at the moment, because you are working with Inner Circle, so you have a little bit experience.
So I would say that I have been there for 2 years. I set up a center, and then they moved from a small gym to the bigger gym. So I would say the hardware has been improving. So that is good thing. I'm constantly, and right now we are doing weekly training session for the Inner Circle. But software is something that we will need to continually catching up. I would say that in Singapore, we are probably 5 years behind Australia, America, UK, but Bangladesh is another 5 years behind Singapore. So that is in terms of the software skills. Yeah, so that is something they need to constantly brush up, because we are facing issues like cultural differences. Yeah.
And language is one of our barrier as well. So I think hopefully we will rid of this barrier as well very soon, as much as we more take those in like different language session like English, Hindi, so we will learn more as a parents to
Yeah.
communicate. Thank you so much, Mr. GUO, for today's session. Hopefully we'll have more session from you
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
have time in future.
Yeah. We discuss. We can have look at today. We are looking at sensory, and other times we can look at gross motor, fine motor, and social skills. Yep.
Thank you so much. We are looking forward for your session in soon future. Have a lovely day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Allah,
Okay. Bye.
goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for joining with us today. Thank you, Mr.
Bye.
Guhua. Bye
See
bye.
you. Bye.